Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to the Alchemist and the Oracle, a space where we engage in spiritualized conversations that deepen understanding, inspire transformation, and hopefully spark meaningful dialogue about life's most profound truths. I am Nicole of the Oracle, and I am joined by my amazing co-host, the Warrioress Ardeshir the Alchemist. So welcome to the Alchemist and the Oracle. And today we're going to get into conversation about the COVID-19 pandemic. So we all know COVID was like this physical pandemic, right? But I have come to realize there is this invisible epidemic that came with it, loneliness. So this builds upon the last two episodes that we talked about because it's just this conversation is what started the other two, but we're kind of like reverse engineering it. Yeah. So loneliness, when you think of COVID-19, the pandemic, you had social distancing, isolation, there was fear of contagion, and it wasn't just about so safety became an issue. And so they didn't just keep us safe. They also left many people feeling very disconnected in how they handled the physical pandemic. So during those years, the world was really focused on the physical survivor. But what I feel, and a lot of people feel, is that it took, what took the real hit was the emotional and the spiritual survival. So the loneliness piece, it really came in and it really started to chip away at people's mental health, at their sense of belonging, and thus our collective spirit. And so there's this part that's both kind of fascinating and haunting at the same time, that loneliness spreads like a virus. And I feel like that is what really has spread. And one thing the research does show, and I remember this, is it was a study that I read when I was working at CDC about how they did research on how when people around you are disconnected, that you are more likely to withdraw too. So thus loneliness can be contagious. And so in a way, we were really living through two pandemics at once. One we could measure in case counts, and the other I really feel was like this quietly infected our hearts. And here's why I felt this conversation matters now. So the immediate perceived threat to our safety has eased for some, and some people are like, it's gone, it's past. And so we can start to kind of breathe again, right? Which means it's, for me, and just kind of the work that we both do, it means it's the right time to ask the harder questions. How did we get here? Is always kind of where my mind goes. What wounds are still bleeding out? What are the bleeders? And have we really gotten out, or have we really gotten over this virus, or has it mutated? I see it has kind of mutated into something new, something that can be seen as less visible, but just as damaging. Because when you really look around, I see the symptoms of loneliness everywhere. And to me, I feel that's why there's a call to really talk about what we're talking about today. And I'll bring you in after I make this one last point here. I always look at the quiet whispers, right? Because it's important to notice the quiet whispers before it becomes a full-on dumpster fire. And I see these quiet whispers of an indication of things that could get, how do I put this in clean terms? Shit is getting ready to get really real really quickly if people aren't really seeing or acknowledging the impact that the pandemic has had. I feel that we're still in this state of PTSD. And some people are even we can't even agree on the fact that that was a traumatic experience as a collective. You have some people that want to rewrite history because for whatever reason. So based on what I said, what's your feedback as well? And I also want to, with you, talk about the terminology that was used, because I kind of broke that down, which I found really, really curious. I kind of went through that a couple of last year. But before we get there, remind me if I don't get to this point, because I think it'll be really interesting. But what's your take on COVID the coronavirus, COVID-19, the pandemic, like, and how
Well,
it relates to loneliness.
I think you're wanting to come up on the different, because I did some research and I have my notes here, the different types of loneliness that occurred during the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
and there were several. But from what you shared, I mean, from social to exist, the collective to grief to digital to the lingering, that still I believe is going on. So for me, looking, it it was a little crazy, but considering um the work or the work that I was doing or began doing that, and I think that our leader Major kind of came in and helped a lot of people through that understanding spiritually what was going on and how it meant and how it was starting to affect before we even really got into the meat of it in the spring of 2020. And it was just like, what's going on, and how come this was already transforming way before anybody wanted to share? Now, the thing about
Mm.
people panicking is that people need to know, and if we look at things, without panicking, it's just like when the fire burns. If everybody go crazy, then sometimes people don't get out. We have to understand that panicking also causes a lot of stress on us and what we do. But to pull people away from the society, and I know how it affected, the children and adults, and then it brought about a certain loneliness even in the house. Um, I mean, people ended up discovering some things that about themselves that they didn't really understand, especially when you have a household that you're working all the time, you're moving, you're coming that, and it caused a lot of distress for some people, and also the lack of communication that was found because people got so much into working, taking care of the kids, doing that some couples um, weren't able to even relate with each other in that communicative state. So it was a recognition of that for me. Personally, I was, kind of curious about, what was going on and how you would shut down a whole world, not even just here, but abroad as well. And then I'm telling myself, I'm like, why can't I go outside and walk? I mean, you're staying in the house, not thinking you can even go outside and walk in the neighborhood. And I found that to be very interesting. And so
And
me
that fed into the
being,
loneliness too. What you're saying is like
yeah,
that just fed
yeah, I
right
mean,
into it. Yeah.
and I mean, it's like just wow. So when you're thinking about not being able to see your brother or go to a house where you stay, or if they've been somewhere else, like with their people, that they have to stay at that location and that
Yeah.
they can't come to that location. But some of us kind of defied that a little
Oh
bit.
gosh, yes. But thankfully so. I feel like those people were proof that it wasn't as desperate of a situation as the messaging really said, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
I like
you
the
know,
rebels. I shout out to the rebellious souls that were like, I'm not doing none of
yeah,
this.
I was definitely that.
You were,
And
yeah, you were
then
like, mm-mm.
So I'm like, I'm going outside and walk. And then it come to find out that I realized when I walked this, I never had an issue in this at this particular time, considering what I take to actually deal with certain seasonal things. And sneezing and what's going on and seeing all these things spraying. I'm like, what the things? And come to find out what was going on. So when it's going on where the time where my birthday is, right? So the rebel was that, well, I'm gonna run in because there was times I didn't see my siblings. So it's like, And then when we did, it's like, well, we're gonna hug each other and I'm keeping my system up. I don't know about his, but I'm good. And so the birthday, so I'm at the house, everybody at the house, and so we just had an M2 birthday party at one of the guys who was in my class in the front yard. And yes, we did that.
Oh, I remember I used to love watching the videos of people in the neighborhood that would drive by to celebrate like birthdays for people in
In their cars.
on their street. Yeah, and they would have like balloons and signs. I just thought that really did give me a lot of hope of how people started to realize like these are the people that I'm contained with. How can how can we be in community that honors and ensures that other people don't feel that disconnection?
Well, I wasn't expecting this, so we just walked up to the block and, and all of a sudden people showed up. It was just funny because of my brother and a guy who I went to school with, who grew up middle block, and all the peoples. And they started blasting music in the car or from the house or whatever, and they just decided that we were gonna have a birthday party for me in the front yard.
That's how it used
And
to be,
so,
right?
and I'm trying to be like, oh, I don't know. And then I was like, just screw it. So everybody kind
Mm.
of stayed and talked and did this. I don't know if any hugging went on, it might have, but I'm like, I'm good. But for certain, I'm just like, no. And then I still had to stay away from people who smoke because I just can't do that. So you have to go that way, have to go this. And not only that, of course, when you smoke and what comes out your body comes out your body, but we had a blast. And I mean, I'm like, you know what? I don't care. However you happen, how does it matter? And people will expect, that it needs to be this way or that way. So no, we alchemized. We just made it happen in such a way that just wasn't, and it was a good time. It was a good time. So
I'm glad you had a positive experience. I think
had
those
to make it
tend to
happen.
be, but I feel like those are the loudest voices in the room, right? Because that's even what you saw online during that time is like how the communities were coming together. They were like, especially like over in Italy where they would sing every night. Like there was this song that they would sing and you could just hear it like bellowing through the streets. And but then it kind of pivots to how the reality was very different for a lot of people. They didn't have that. Because like even in my neighborhood, they had this sign that someone put that says, "We are in this together." And they used like ribbon and they tied like these different colored ribbons on everyone's mailboxes. So that was like
Yeah.
a level of community connection, but it still wasn't, it was still very isolating. And,
Yes, it
like,
definitely was.
ooh, what happened to the sound? Okay.
I don't know. Is it fine now? It definitely was. It's like not going, but even with one of my other cousins, still see it. Just like had to wear the mask. The mask was suffocating. I found some things out about the mask that when you look at viruses versus bacteria, there's a different way. I won't get into it too much because it's like, oh, I can't continue to use this thing. But for the whole I got all kind of things that I think that I'm going to put in a frame. I got masks for my football team, my baseball team, Ohio State, all them. Got all kind of different masks that to make it fun, unfortunately. But yes, it became very, 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 very challenging, isolating. And for me, I was thinking this was a great opportunity if you lived in a household with somebody for you to get to know each other. And I don't know that people really took advantage
Man,
of
some people took
that.
advantage of it, trust me, on both sides of the
Oh,
spectrum.
well, if they had a
They
whole
figured
bunch
it
of kids, then
out.
they did.
They had to figure that out real quick.
And then it ended up being the opposite. They
That's
ended
what
up
I
the
mean. They
ring,
figured that out real quick. Like, oh, we can't
yeah,
quarantine together.
the ring left
Oh, the
finger.
ring was gone. The ring was thrown. Get out. Or I'm
Ah,
leaving.
see,
Oh
and
man.
I'm an advocate of getting to know you. somebody before you do, because you just never know. And this was a prime example. And I mean, and then we have, the the existential, you know,
Existential crisis that a lot of people experience. Yeah.
yeah, being forced to wrestle with the deep or the uncertainty. And see, we're not, most of us are not good with uncertainty as well. And so understanding that and just sitting, and someone just had to sit, and you just have to think, what was this opportunity? And a lot of people took opportunities for business to do certain things. And what I liked about a couple of people that never got down, some of them were more downtown, where they figured it out. And that's the thing that we had to do most. And even in this particular time is figure it out. And it don't always come right away, but people figured out that to keep the business going, just put people in their cars and serve them that way.
Yeah.
People, there's still people who want to eat and still have some money. And the whole thing that we have to do, the biggest thing was put away for emergencies. And one of the companies that I was with, and I wish somebody had told me a lot sooner. But as long as you have breath and body, you continue to make change and continue to understand that money goes around circularly, and that people were still spending. Some people so detriment that, that workplaces had to close. I'm like, how do you close everything except for the grocery store? That was probably a place to go work, because I definitely went to the grocery store. We
Well,
had
but
masks and
see, there
people were
was a lot of
so
places
cool
that
with each
did
other.
close though, because then they were considered what did they call them? Something workers. Because my friend was considered that, and so for her experience is completely different. And I think this
Mm-hmm.
is why it's so important to start to have these conversations to unpack the experiences that other people had from you. Because everyone didn't have like that experience of connection. And so when we got out of quote unquote lockdown, the transition was like, oh, I still had community. They made things work. Whereas you had people, I feel like at different levels, you had people who had that, and then you had the people who never stopped having to work. And even that is kind
Yeah.
of like branched. You have those that were actually working with like the hospital workers. And then like my friend, she still had to go to work. She still had
Mm-hmm.
to do her job. She still had to like to show up and everything like that. And they made some adjustments, to equate for like social distancing and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But she still had to go to work. So her
Mm-hmm.
reality of what was going on in the world, she didn't have time to see the number count at the end of the night, and she had to go to sleep, get up and go to work and do it over and over and over again. So her experience is very, very different. And I think it's so curious when you hear people that was like their experience and they're like, yeah, I I just worked through the pandemic, so I didn't get a chance to like sit and reflect on my life. I didn't have time. I had to work. And then when you talk to the people that worked in the hospital environment,
Yes, that.
even that is layered as well. But um, I think my perspective on the hospital environment is it's always been a delicate system, and it doesn't take
Yes.
much for it to become overwhelmed because it's not
True.
focused on helping people heal. It's sick care,
Yeah. Yeah.
sick care,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like fire care, and that's why they turned away people. It was like, hey, if you aren't having extreme, if you it was to the point where some hospitals, it
That's
depends on the
true.
state, if you could
They
not
did.
catch your breath for like a certain period of time, they were like, don't come to the hospital, we're going to turn you away. But any other situation, you would be admitted into the emergency room like immediately.
Yeah. 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 You got a point. That was definitely the case. It was definitely the case here as well.
Yeah,
It
that
was.
that
It
was the
was.
interesting thing to see. But then, you see the workers that how they were just like a lot of them quit because of that. A lot of them have PTSD because of that. And a lot of them I think is really kind of sad. I think now their voices are starting to be heard, but a lot of them were saying how certain practices were put in place that were unethical. They talked about how the messaging was very skewed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I think this is part of why we're having the conversation about how COVID, it mutated into this contagion of loneliness. And so some
Yeah.
people caught it. Some people caught the loneliness, and other people they caught something else. They caught remembering the importance of community. I think some people caught, and I think everyone caught loneliness. I think other people treated it in different ways.
Yes.
So the treating
Yes. I
it
mean,
versus like self isolation versus like, hey, let's say happy birthday to my neighbor across the street, kids, or like let me buy myself like do some arts and crafts and say like happy birthday and sing happy birthday to them across the street and invite the neighbors to come outside in their driveway and sing happy birthday, right? And it
yeah.
was
Because
out
even
there.
I'm trying to think that we still, like I said, the rebels still, my friend before she passed, we did have a birthday party for her and the kids all them through the birthday party, my goddaughter, through the birthday party, yeah, for them. And we were outside and I had the mask on, then I kind of take it off and I'm just like, I'm going because I'm good. I'm keeping my system up. I'm eating, I'm doing whatever, trying to take a walk. And then you just have to trust. And because I know me and I never had a situation during that particular time. And, honoring myself, keeping that. And we just like if we gonna go through this, we gonna do something fun and still, keep that community live. Some people were a lot closer. I still talk to people at a distance, but it was I don't know what to say, just
So
a
you had a
different
different experience, is
nothing.
what you're saying. Like
Yeah,
you treated the contagion of being in community, right? Is what you're
yeah,
saying. I
yeah.
think for me, because I was the one that was responsible for my mother.
Hmm.
And and so
That brings up a question I want to share that came up
what's the
about
question?
parents. So I was in a group for a little bit, and then around grief, I don't really like doing groups, but I've been more apt to it to understand because I don't really get into kind of talking about it or expressing that, but I understand kind of the need is because I had handled death ever since I can remember as a child,
Mhm.
beginning with the closest, which was the great grandmother at 10. So I had said in a conversation with somebody that I'm glad that my mother, because I know that she would have still wanted to go to kind of do, and that would have been really, 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 really challenging for her, and the fact of what conditions that she had and how that would have been. Of course, I would have been right there, but there was a part of me that said I'm glad that she wasn't here to go through that, and the fact that she's not here anyway, was something that I was able to say
Mhm.
um without the tears. I mean, so and then you're talking about taking care of that, which would have been a whole another layer. And it was a layer to do to look at that. I remember going to see one of my cousins. And me and him was so tight, married into the family on the west side when he was in a facility, and did get to see him. Had to have the shield up on the other side, but it kind of took a while. But people weren't really doing what they needed to do to protect themselves on certain instances, and something went on at that facility, unfortunately. But that was the layer and it just came out my mouth naturally. It wasn't that I thought about it, it's just that we were talking about it and looking at, some of the people who are crossing and how that would have had affected them in such a way that would have been difficult. Even, the unfortunateness when it talks about the collective grief loneliness and the loss of people, and and what that meant. And there are some people who didn't go; they just left during that time from other conditions than C-19. But it was a little rough in that. So if you had a parent or
Very rough.
somebody who,
It was very rough.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
rough for
I
my
bet,
family.
I bet.
'Cause my uncle passed with from COVID.
Things. The one thing that was interesting was to see the streets because they talked about the streets. I mean, to get on the interstate, ah, girl. I mean, it was crazy that no cars
And
were
that
on
was
the
so
interstate but
nice.
me.
My
Huh?
my friends that still had to go to work, they said that her original commute was like an hour, 15 minutes to get to work, right? Normal like
I bet you it was only
pre-pandemic.
30 minutes.
It took her 15 minutes to get to work.
Yeah,
An hour and 15 to 15 minutes. Because there was literally no one. There was
no
no
one.
one. So
There
for
was
her,
no
it
one.
takes her a while to get to the interstate, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
there's all these lights, and everyone else is like trying to get to the interstate. And she said, like, it took her, she was just like dumbfounded.
Yeah. I
She was
mean,
like, an hour and 15, like, it took her an hour extra time to get to work before. That's insane to go from an hour to 15 minutes. But a lot of people,
that was her real drive time. That was the real drive time.
but even that wasn't real because but literally there
Without
was no
cars,
one
but
in the community. Like, even like, there was no one on the surface level community roads. People weren't driving. There was
that
no
was
one,
the
hardly
weirdest thing.
anyone at the gas station. The only time I didn't have to wait
Well,
for a
the
car.
gas stations did stay open though.
Well, yeah, people were still getting their sustenance and habitual experiences that they partake
Yeah,
in satisfied.
yeah. I mean, I wish I could have took a picture. Of course, it was glory. It was surreal. But then I said to myself,
Where were you going,
really?
Miss Man? Where were you going?
To the grocery store or back and forth?
Back and forth to what? She was just driving. You were enjoying just being able
There
to
was some
drive.
time that I mean, I used to do that at night here in my fair city. Because it was so cool to a degree, and then so shocking at the same time.
I remember the first
I
time I
mean,
got on
I swear to God, there was
that
nobody
blew
on
my
the interstate with
mind.
me.
I was confused. I was like,
Nobody.
are the zombies? Because at that time, like, The Walking Dead was kind of wrapping up, and like, there's always they would make a joke of the scene, like in The Walking Dead, that where you could see like the Atlanta skyline behind. It was like that on the downtown connector, except you didn't have like abandoned cars, but that was just crazy. I remember going downtown and doing, so they call it the Grady curve.
Mm-hmm.
I've never not been like, I flew through the Grady curve. Normally I could see like the grid, like, oh, and can read the graffiti because I'm sitting there for that
Yes,
long a time and
yes, yes.
can see the details and the colors, the
There
highlights
was
and the
some
shade.
piece. I think the animals were,
Thanks.
I
Oh yeah,
mean,
they were excited.
walking the street. Well, I mean, they were,
That was
they
crazy to
were,
see the pictures of that.
it was something. It was like, wow. So basically, that was kind of relaxing. It was still weird, but, decided that when the parks let us go, I'm gone. I'm going to go to the park. I'm going to be outside and then walk in the neighborhoods. You know, it was something. So for me, I didn't allow, except for in the beginning. I mean, it ain't go nowhere. I mean, but I did go to the grocery store. I got to give my sustenance. So, And so it was it was good. But then talking to people, and some of us will pull the mask down, but most of us we talking through the mask, and it's just a different criteria. And I don't know why we can't continue to be that way with one another, even when we're not going through something as of that and as of what we have going on now, to stay in that honor. And when we were in my first which was 2020. We started on my grandmother's birthday, ended on one of my best friends' birthday, who's crossed. All of my people have crossed. That most of them that I grew up with very young, and so I went to the store and was pretty blessed by the guy. It was frigid. No, never mind. Yeah, what's this? It must have been the second. It was some, but I knew it was frigid cold outside. Maybe it was with two. And anyway, in the grace of someone, because it was so cold, and this guy decided to, I didn't have many groceries, but decided to pay for it because he's like, it's really frigid. I don't want you to have to go out there and come back again. And I was like, thank you. I'm like, I'll pay it for it. And I just gave him a virtual hug. I wish I could hug you. So it was definitely in the midst of in the midst of that. I don't know. It was crazy. It was just crazy. So I see, like you say, for the reason why we brought it up, that that's still in because of how I see people respond to me, responding to each other, and still have what I would consider we still an alienated, alienated,
Alienated. Alienated.
alienated ourselves. There's certain words, this tongue, boy. So alienated ourselves um in a way that's really not really serving our emotional um and spiritual beingness.
Mm, yeah. I want
So
to,
we
yeah, I think that's a really good point. Um,
people are still feeling hesitant to socialize or re-engage, the
because they
pandemic,
don't feel safe. They still don't feel safe.
that's the other one. Yeah, that's the
And it
other
all goes
one.
back to safety because it's like we were in the state of
Yeah.
fight or flight, and like I said, like people treated the contagion of loneliness very differently.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
based on how you treated that and you're continuing to treat it, it's gonna show up very differently. And I think I'm always the one that's like, I'm sadness, she's joy, right? It's always that. And it's purposeful because I
Yeah.
recognize that we are leaving a large group of people behind who are extremely lonely, who are not out of this pandemic. For them, it's not, it has not ended. They're still in it. And I think there's also this illusion that some people have, like, oh, I've left it. And they're not being real with themselves either. They're still masking in a way that's not a physical mask, right? And even the debate
Hmm.
about mask, right?
Mental. Yeah.
This is where I am, right? I feel like there are certain levels of mask that can help in certain levels, right? But I look at the mask as like from a different perspective. Because there are certain situations, like my mom, she still wears her mask out. And
Mm.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I'm gonna tell you, she's not the only one. There's other people that are
Other
still
people
wearing
want to
masks.
hear.
But here's the
Yeah.
thing: there's always been people that have had masks on before the pandemic. And I
Good
think
point. So
so
our Asian culture does
I'm
it, and
talking
they're
about
sticking.
here. I'm talking
Oh,
about
really?
here. Yeah.
Mm.
Because I remember kind of thinking, I was like, you know what? I would see kind of like a one off of people that would be wearing a face mask, and it would be like a surgical grade face mask.
Hmm.
And it's just a reminder that what is the contagion that people are currently experiencing that is a bit different than what you're going through or is layered on top of what we're all going through? Because I think we all are going through the same thing. It's just how we're treating it, right? And so the whole mask
Yes.
debate, I feel like people need to shut about it because this is my take on it. You don't know how much safety that mask provides people in doing their best to treat their loneliness.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So, oh,
Okay.
okay. In order for me to feel safe and to feel a sense of connection with people, I want to wear a face mask, right? And so
Yeah.
what's the big deal? Just because you choose for yourself not to still be wearing it, or even during that time, like, oh, I don't think it's effective. Who are you to say that that mask is not effective to people? Because then there's the placebo effect. Then it's the mustard seed effect too, right? Just think of the number of people that were like, "Ooh, this mask is keeping me safe." And even if the science can say, "Oh, it's not," maybe their faith in the mask capacity to do that was activated in a
They're
way
moving. Yeah.
that actually did keep them safe from particles in the air. I think we always forget
Yeah.
layer,
Yeah.
that layer of what we focus our attention on is a prayer and
Mm-hmm.
action.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think we need to mind our own business and stay out of other people's business. And what, like, looking at what they're doing is like, well, that's crazy. Why are you still wearing a mask? Two things. You don't know why that person is wearing a mask. Because I go back to the people that I remember seeing that were wearing a mask before the pandemic for whatever reason. We weren't
Mm-hmm.
questioning them then, but now it's like, oh, you're crazy for still wearing a mask. And then two, you don't know how it's calming their nervous system down to the point where they're doing their best to
They
treat
feel safe.
their
Yeah.
loneliness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so for me, if my mom feels safe and comfortable wearing her face mask out, going to the grocery store, and she doesn't do it when people come to the house either. It's just when we're going. And I ain't gonna lie, there's some situations where I'm like, I'm kind of glad I have my mask on because there's some people coughing,
Coughing around. Yeah. And
coughing, and
not
like,
covering their mouth.
yes. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh
Instead
my
of,
gosh.
yeah. So the
Um,
thing is to do
but it
that. And
makes
then
her
if you
feel
call,
safe.
yeah.
And so if it's no big deal to
That's a
me.
valid
I will
point.
put my
Yeah.
mask on when I'm out with her. Because who's to say? It may have kept me from getting not just COVID, maybe a cold or
Well,
there's other contagions.
you just mentioned the lung thing. So, and I'm very familiar. Of course, you know, I don't sit in diagnoses, but the whole thing of it is that if there's something going on within the person where they're compromised, they're using that because masks protect
Yeah.
viruses. I mean, not viruses, but bacterial and, like you said, certain elements in the
Fungal.
air. Well, that not so much because see, viruses is a whole different topic I won't go into, but
Mm-hmm.
those things that we're talking about because there are a few people wearing church. I have called 100 people. Now, the one thing I did not do is wear my mask in the car unless somebody else was in there. And then, as long as they had theirs
With
on, I'm
yourself?
taking mine off. There's people who were driving around here and still do inside the car. And
Okay,
I'm
I will tell
like,
you sometimes if I am with my
I
mom,
need to breathe it
I'm
sometime.
lazy and I'm just like, we're going to another place. But sometimes you get real. Here's the thing, you get comfortable and your body does learn to adjust to wearing that. Look at people
Mhm.
over in Asia. They're used to wearing masks in like 100-degree weather. Their body
Yeah,
has adjusted.
yeah.
It's
Well, they do
adjusted.
that because, and even before, and the reason why I brought them up is because they understand and care about the nature of other people around them. So if they're sick and have a cold or something of that degree, because it was asked of them, you know, because we don't know unless we ask as well, right?
Yeah.
Um, and we'll do that if they're not feeling up to par to protect others.
Yeah. Those around them. Yeah. But that
Yeah.
even highlights another issue, another conversation. Why are you not given the space or the encouragement to stay at home when you're not feeling well. I think that highlights another issue
Yeah,
in
yeah.
not honoring the body saying, "Hey, I'm not feeling well," and just laying down, not engaging in day-to-day life that like
Some people
everything is
tell you to
okay.
stay home, but there's a lot of people who, if they don't go to work,
I know.
they
Yeah,
don't
they lose
get
their job.
paid.
That's
That
my
too,
point.
depending on who
That's
you're
the
dealing
problem.
with.
I think that's
And
the
that's
bigger
ridiculous
issue.
because it
That's
wasn't
an issue
like
too.
that.
It
Yeah,
some
because
cultures it is like that. Like you said, a lot of times they wear the mask because they do care about the impact of those around them, and also they care about the impact of themselves at the same time. Because like I need to go to work. Because like you said, if I don't go to work, I don't get paid. So if I'm sick,
mhm,
I'm gonna do my best to not keep you sick because I know you probably need to go to work too. So we have that
yeah, but
level of
yeah.
understanding, which in itself is a beautiful demonstration of like caring about your impact to other people that you're around too.
So we're talking about all the different types, and so I mean, before we end, we'll pose the question, to find out because this is a
Yeah, I
safe
had ways
space
to go.
to understand what you experienced during this time. Did you experience all of them? Some of us like shifted. Once we figured out I could shift, I stayed not like, well, then when things don't make a lot of sense to me, I shift. I alchemize them. I just like and then go and do. But I still was very cautious and concerned. So we had the social isolation, we had the existential, we had the collective, dealing with the distancing, the restrictions, the uncertainty and like being outside the questions. Then we had the collective. It's like this whole paradox of global event, and then I think that the Zoom and a lot of things, I think help me bring people together because if I can see your face, I can connect with your energy or I can connect and see you just like we're doing here. Then we had the grief, which I think was really hit people really, really hard. And even people digitally still felt some disconnection
Yeah,
because a lot of people are personal, and then we talk about, some of the other things that people are still experiencing around that because they're still feeling because and then there's the news. That's a whole nother puppy that sometimes we gotta
we'll talk.
back up off of
Yeah,
that.
that'll be another conversation. Yeah,
Yeah, that keeps us scared and isolated as well. So I mean, see, because loneliness, it wasn't just about the physical, right? It was about the mental, it was about the spiritual, it was about all these different, things. And even when the restrictions lifted, some of it was still cautious. Of course, I'm tired with some other people, and I'm like, I keep myself up. What is the mask doing? So there's a time where I felt I'm like, I'm cool, I'm cool, I'm cool. And I had to honor that. But if I don't feel well, I don't go out. I'm not used to talking about it. And it's not that I don't want, people to send me love. It's just that I'm not used to, you know, like being that way. But sometimes it's good to receive love when you're not feeling well. So and it was just going back looking at it all, looking at the summer, of course. Being spiritual warrior in training was a huge, huge, huge shift. And just looking at you know that things will pass. In the midst we become creative. People got creative, people got business, people did what they need because, as one of my colleagues said, is that, money still goes around. It's just about what are we going to do, when something happens. Still have to look at it and I still have to undo, some of the fear and go into the faith and go to, that a higher power. We all have one, however you choose to identify it, so we can continue to live our best lives. It's just like what's going on right now. But we have to come together, as one. Talking about it doesn't, doesn't do anything unless we're coming up with creative ideas to better,
Let me
and
ask you
even in our
this.
own loneliness.
Do you think the fact that what we went through is why we are here going through what we're going through? Because I see the connection. I think it's just all in the same. It's just we think that we move beyond where we are, and I think we're just in the same position, just different dressing. This is my perspective. I'm just curious your take on that.
A little bit is the reason why, we have to, just like one of the other young people I know, is to take action and stand in power collectively as a unit, and that's where our creativity comes in. And how do we better this condition, and how do we not have any one individual or any one thing control our freedom and our destiny, and the fact that we're not really alone. We think that we are. And just like our other two episodes leading up to this one, lets us know that that's not normally true, and that something is shifting within us in this time when we're alone, and to find or to connect, with ourselves, with our authentic nature and selves. But yes, I think it's all played up to this. But how are we going to um, walk in it? I don't want to say send it, but to walk in it and through it, you know.
Mm.
And it's just like, what did you, our audience here, and we appreciate you listening, looking back, what did you experience? And how since then, even though we are still experiencing the effects of it to a degree, how are you moving? How
She
are you
said to a
moving
degree.
forward with it?
I feel like we're still with it. I think a lot of people are in illusion. I think that's a good point. I think you highlighted that depending on how you treated the contagion, your perspective is just very different. There's still people that are still reeling from it and just don't feel like they have even gotten to a place of catching their breath, right?
I agree.
Because
These
we
years have
went
went by
into
fast.
this and now we're going into like so much is going on in the world, right? And it was
Yep.
like at that one point in time, at least seemingly, it was like, ooh, we're all going through the same thing. And because we were all going through the same thing, I
Mhm.
think it made us all feel connected. And I think it reminded us of this connection. And I also feel like there was some strategy and strategic behavior and energy manipulation because everything is energy. I got to be like the oracle here
Yeah,
around
yeah, yeah,
this.
yeah.
Um, but okay, I want to talk about the etymology really quickly of the words that were used because I found this super fascinating in
Okay.
terms of like the
I'm all about
words
that.
that were used. So
Okay.
when we look at like corona, right? I'm gonna do my best to corona. Corona
Oh
actually means
yeah.
crown.
Okay, yes.
So when we think of that crown, so it's a crown is your sovereignty. So it it sits alone and it's also isolated at the top of your head, right? So corona. And then when you think of COVID, COVID, it comes from corona, the CO, the VI comes from the virus, and the D is disease, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
But if you break it differently, it can look completely different based on your perspective of the word. So COVID. So CO for together, VID from Vierde, which is translates to see. So together to see. So it was like this mirroring, right? Because everything is like there's this duality that exists, right? As above, so below.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
Mm-hmm.
higher self. I don't like to say lower self. I don't really like that terminology there, but like your egoic self versus your soul, right? How we were talking
There
about
you go.
how loneliness is the ego expression of words and how you like broke down the definition of that
Mm-hmm.
versus solitude, right? And so
Mhm.
COVID, for some people, they looked at the word very differently. And I think because of that, kind of like thinking through what we talked about, their treatment protocol was very different. Some people literally saw it as COVID, meaning like coronavirus and disease, right? And other people saw co and vid, and they saw for together to see, together to see, together. So for those people that saw it as COVID, together, seeing together, they leaned into treating this contagion through community.
Mhm.
Others, COVID, they just saw it as a disease. And even taking it a bit further, because I was like, I went down this rabbit hole. Pandemic, when you look at the word pandemic, it literally means all people. And so there was this shared experience
All over the world.
we all
Yeah.
had. And I'm going to take it a
Mhm.
bit further here. And quarantine, which is Contagioni, which is Italian, which translates as 40 days. And this signifies the number of trial and transformation. And when you look at this, it was almost like the language itself was like telling us that this isn't just a health crisis, that it was a mirror, that it was a test, it was an invitation. And that's why I really feel like the symbolism of the language of how people looked at COVID and how their perspective of virus, of like, you know, COVID, like seeing it as disease versus like COVID versus like, oh, we're in this together. Let's treat it from that perspective. I think people approached it very
Yeah.
differently. They really did. And
Yeah.
so some people are still there. And I think for some people that physical survival mode of seeing it as like a virus and a disease, it overshadowed that emotional, spiritual survival of those that saw it as COVID together
Togetherness. Yeah.
see and how they treated
Working
it.
through together. Yeah.
And so I feel like you have a lot of people who lost touch with belonging and there's
Mhm.
disconnection of their inner self. Because when you go back to the origin of the word crown,
Mm.
um, it when you think of the crown chakra, it reminds me of that sovereignty connection, right? This is the spiritualized part of the conversation here. So looking at that symbolically, the crown, again, as I said, is attached to the crown chakra. And this is the energy center of your sovereignty, of your spiritual connection. COVID, it disrupted that energy. It literally did. I think it was very strategic. We start to hear
Oh,
where
there's
it
no
came from,
doubt.
we
No
see now
doubt.
where the virus came from. It disrupted that sovereignty and it cut people off from community. It made people feel just so,
Scared.
I don't even think scared
Fearful.
is the
Well,
word,
fearful.
but it cuts deeper.
Yeah,
Um,
I
it,
agree.
it
It does.
provides this invitation. Like the point of this conversation is to recrown ourselves, to take back our sovereignty here,
That right
to
there.
connect to the presence, the authenticity, our inner authority. And even when the world felt unstable externally, I think it's that reminder of those who saw COVID in a very different way and approach in terms of how they treated that contagion.
Hmm.
And I think that's why you had some people that were very rebellious and like, you are not, I am a sovereign being. You ain't gonna tell me that I gotta wear a mask. You ain't gonna tell me that I can't go to the park. You ain't gonna tell me that I can't talk to my. And so I think it's important to remember that and also
Yes.
be mindful that some people are not where you are because they're still having a hard time breathing. While you are full on breathing mode, they're still struggling. And I think it's important to have this conversation because some people are further along. Some people are like, yeah, that was a long time ago. And some people are still in it. it has not ended
It
for them.
wasn't that long ago.
And I think it's important for us to be compassionate and understanding
Loving, yeah,
and realizing that we may feel like we move beyond this. And there's also some people that feel like they're being left behind. And so I
yeah.
think you can have two things going on at the same time, but I think it's important to talk about this.
Well, that's why it's a time to still and maybe always be and take the time for you to be in stillness, for you to time to connect with that self so you don't continue to be in that state of loneliness or that state of disconnect
Mm-hmm.
because temporary instead of long term because it affects you. It affects your whole beingness. I mean, it affects your aging process. It affects everything about you. And you are, are watching, and those who even know, it's always good to reiterate your value and that you are worth taking the time um, to be in, but also to relinquish. And in this time to become a nude in the space, because this is the time to be renewed and to become a new in the midst of what we're going on and to see things as they truly are, not how as they will have us to perceive them to be, is what I'm enjoying to say, and how I will walk that
Mm-hmm.
in that nature of letting go of the illusion and loneliness is in that state when we're really hurting and nothing wrong. That's why we're here. Some of us are where we are so we can support you or support anyone and that essence of becoming and
Yeah.
allowing yourself to be renewed
Yeah.
in this space and time.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a really good point. It's a great conversation. I think my hope is that it's reminded people to maybe take the blinders off a little bit more often. And yes, I think it's
Vision.
important to prioritize your health and sometimes we have to have boundaries around other people and what have you. But if you have people that you identify that you care about, I think it's so important to make sure that you aren't leaving them behind when you think that they're standing right beside you. Because if
Yeah.
you haven't taken the blinders off, how do you know that they're there? I think you're assuming that they're there. And so this is just providing an opportunity just to kind of pause and reflect, unpack how you had an experience about the pandemic, and also allow the space for other people to share their experience in a non-judgmental way. I think we have to let go of the judgment. I think we have to let go of all of it, this
Or the
division,
condemnation. Yeah.
divisiveness of it, and just
Yeah.
allow people to have their experience because that's their experience. And it doesn't mean that you have to shift their perspective or that you feel compelled to like change their narrative because guess what? That's their narrative. You don't get to change it, just like you don't want other people to change your experience. And I think we have to be really careful when we disvalidate people's experiences. And with that, the prompt today, I want people to like take the time to see like what did you see during COVID? Because like I think you talked about like how did you see COVID? How did you see COVID? Did you see it as like this virus and disease, or did you see it as this opportunity to come together? How did you see it? How did you see it about yourself, about connection, and about loneliness that you can no longer unsee? That's also part of this conversation, providing you the opportunity to catch your breath, to breathe for those that may feel left behind and those that are like I'm in a marathon here. Let's all pause and take a breath here. and we
Yes.
reevaluate who maybe we left behind that we thought was standing next to us that maybe we need to like wait so they can kind of catch up, or maybe we need to circle back around. That's the
Or
point.
not so much wait, but to just
Sometimes we do have to
be
wait for
that,
people to
well, to
catch
be
up.
that example, you
But you're
know, to
still doing you
see.
though. I'm not saying your life is on pause. No. I think sometimes you do have to allow people the space to get to where you can meet
Yeah,
them on a similar level, and sometimes it's just never that, and that's okay. You get
yeah,
to choose.
true that. Yeah, true that.
All
True
right.
that.
Thanks so much for hanging with us in this conversation. I
Yes.
know it may be a hard conversation for a lot of people to have. I know a lot of people are avoidant
We
of this
have to have them.
conversation as well, because I feel this is providing an opportunity for us to heal our crown chakra, which is our spirit, to reconnect to our heart, which is that human connection piece, because it's in the chair, it's in the room, as she likes to say and remind us all the time. And it's so true. So thanks for hanging out with us.
Appreciate it. Yes,
Um,
all.
and be sure to comment down below how you feel about this episode. Give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful, inspiring. Share it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's free to do that. And we hope to see you in the next episode.
Very soon. Much love, y'all.
Thanks for being in
Peace.
conversation with me, Warriors Ardeshir RN. I appreciate
Always, darling.
you. Bye,
Ditto.
guys.
Peace.